enjoyed the tour if you got to do that. The last talk that we're going to have in our session on teaching evolution is from Wesley Roberts. He has been in the trenches. He has done God's work, teaching Middle Tennessee about evolution. He's a retired high school biology teacher, and he's going to be talking to us about his experiences teaching evolution in the Bible Belt.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I am very honored to be here. I'm a native Nashvilleian, born here, went to public schools here and taught in public schools here. I taught for 38 years in Nashville public schools. Hey, that was easy. Thank you so much. So I'll do this in basically two parts. One is I want to share my experiences with you as far as being a teacher of evolution in the public schools in Nashville. And the other thing that I wanted to do is just share a couple of tips that I found in teaching. That we've heard a lot about how divisive this concept can be in a classroom. And I would like to say that one of the first things that I learned to do was to make it undivisive. And the way that I would do that is by asking students on pretty much the first day of class, on a scale of 1 to 10, where does your evolutionary thinking lie? And to facilitate this, I give them a piece of paper. They would write down what they thought their number was. If 1 is non-evolution, 10 is evolution. And then they would get to go up to the whiteboard and tape it up there, turn to the class if they wanted to, and explain why they chose the number that they did. So some examples of this: in August of 2014, the freshman biology class, the class comes in, and this is where they put their numbers. And what I found is that it doesn't have to be an all or none thing. Even though one of our esteemed representatives, Marjorie Taylor Greene, I'm sure you've heard of her, said very recently, I don't believe in evolution because I believe in God. Well, it doesn't have to be that way. So you can fall somewhere along the line. And then it was very interesting. After teaching evolution, and that's a daily thing in a biology class, and especially after I did a unit on human evolution, we revisited this question, and this is how the numbers looked. So these are not the hard scientific graphs that we've seen before, but this was fun. You know, this was an interesting thing. I did that with every class every year for years. This was a third period class, and you can see that there's always some movement, sometimes to the left and sometimes to the right. You can see that in this class, we had a lot of people who were on the non-evolution side. And then in February, there was a big shift to the other side. And then this was the 7th period class. I never could figure that class out. And you can see that once we get back to that, they're not only all over the place, they're above the lines in some situations. So I really never knew exactly what to do. So I'll take you back to when I was, to the day I was born. No, right after I was born, a big thing happened, and that was the launching of Sputnik. And after Sputnik was launched, of course, there was a great fear of losing out to the Soviets in science education. So the immediate response by scientists was to come up with what they called BSCS. Some of us veterans will remember that. When I started teaching in 1988, the course was still called BSCS, but pretty much what the idea was to recognize the theory of evolution as the central organizing principle of modern biology. So that was great. And then as a result of that, our legislature in 1967 repealed the Butler Act, which was, wow, what an incredible thing for our Tennessee State Legislature to do. It was a little different then than it was now, but it was signed by the Tennessee Legislature in May of 1967. I'm sure that signed by Buford Ellington, the governor. And I'm sure that everybody has a teacher that you well remember. I was in 6th grade when this happened, and I remember so well Ms. Qualls, who was our science teacher, came into the classroom and said, the law has been changed. We can now teach evolution. And I had been raised in a fundamentalist home, so the only time I had really heard about evolution was at church and a little bit through my family. But I just remember this so well because she went up to the chalkboard and she drew a line across the chalkboard and put in some dates and showed when the dinosaurs were and things like that. And it really kind of changed my thinking about maybe this is an okay thing to have. I remember that so well, and this is what I looked like then. I'm sure I haven't changed a bit, not at all. Exactly. So then the response of anti-evolutionists was, of course, very, very quick to come up with textbooks about scientific creationism. Biology, A Search for Order and Complexity, don't be fooled by that because it's by the Creation Research Society. So they began to try to bring these things into the classroom, and we're not always successful with that. But then the Tennessee legislature bounced back, and in 1973 they introduced what was known as the Genesis Bill. And the Genesis Bill was supposed to give equal time to evolution and creation. Now, I was a senior at Overton High School when this occurred, and we didn't really talk about it too much other than to say, really, a chapter of Genesis versus evolution? And we didn't know that much about it. I was much more interested in things like this. Hey, what are you laughing at? I haven't changed a bit, I'm sure. But the Americans United for the Separation of Church and State filed suit immediately, and within 2 years, that law was overturned. So the Genesis Bill did not last in the state of Tennessee. After graduation, I went to the University of Memphis, another public institution, and got degrees in biology and secondary education. Then I came to this esteemed university, Vanderbilt, and got my master's. And then I started teaching in 1986. And in 1988, the state attorney general sent a mandate to all of the biology teachers in the state that said basically you can teach any scientific theory, including evolution, but you may not teach things about religion. And very shortly after this, I thought, wow, I'm a biology teacher in Tennessee. I better investigate the Scopes stuff. So I started investigating the Scopes trial and became completely obsessed with it, such that I started creating lesson plans based on that. One thing that I did was I took the transcripts, and if you want to read them, they're only about 450 pages. But I took the last 2 days, which was included the debate between Darrow and Bryan, and I condensed them into a play that we would start every class every year with by letting the students act out the last 2 days of the Scopes trial. And it was such a good way to introduce them to scientific thought. That takes us to a Metro Teachers Science in-service in 1995, in which the director of science education for Nashville Public Schools told all the biology teachers that you must attend this particular session. When I got to the session, guess what they gave us? They gave us this. And they told us, well, the two guys who brought them in, they started this, and I immediately, wait. You've just handed out thousands of dollars of textbooks. Who sent you? And they said, nobody. We're two doctors from Hendersonville, and we like to talk about evolution in the doctor's lounge at the hospital. And I said, no, come on, who are you? Who sent you? And they never would tell me. But as you know, this introduced the concept of intelligent design, and of course it ended up in the Dover Panda trial of 2005. I took that book and immediately put it on the shelf. I did have Judge John Jones sign that book when he came to Vanderbilt a few months ago, and it was very fun. But anyway, that was not going to end the whole thing. In the spring of 1996, one of our legislators, Tommy Burks, he was a senator, a Democrat from Monterey, Tennessee, and he came up with what became known as the Monkey Bill. The Monkey Bill, as you can see, says teach theory, not fact. And if you teach fact, then you will be dismissed. Well, that's pretty high stakes for a teacher, so we had to deal with that. And I just have a couple of, well, I should say that immediately this became a national news story, and it just blew up like nobody had ever seen. So I've taken a couple of clips from the media, and to give you an idea of who Tommy Burks was, I'll start with this one.
And no one is saying you can't teach evolution.
The bill's author, Senator Tommy Burks, says the state had to step in now because of what he sees as a breakdown of family.
There's not the guidance in a lot of homes to even contradict anything that's taught in the school.
You're recognized on Senate Bill 3229.
A controversial bill by Senator Tommy Burks sets new guidelines for teaching the origins of man.
All that it does is what it states, the one line, that the teachers in the schools would teach it as theory, not as fact.
In the Senate chamber, Senator Tommy Burks of Monterey is at his desk early, pondering how to keep alive his evolution bill, weighted down by committee amendments designed to scuttle it.
We're saying that if it is fact that you originated, you're a descendant of a lower species. And that's what it amounts to.
Even since the Scopes trial, People now readily admit that there have been changes in species over...
For an hour and a half went the debate.
If you believe in God, then you believe that he created man and the universe.
We need to vote the bill down because it's unconstitutional, and that's what everybody's forgotten about.
So there was also the companion bill that was introduced into the House, and that was introduced by this man, Representative Zane Whitson of Irwin, Tennessee. Irwin is famous because one time when an elephant the visiting circus ran over a guy, they actually hanged the elephant in the town square. But anyway, this is Zane Whitson, and this was his take. This was from an ABC interview.
Some people disagree, but I think it's only a tale, you know, a guess.
Representative Zane Whitson and many Christian fundamentalists believe evolution contradicts a literal reading of the Bible, the idea that humans were created in the image of God. So Whitson has introduced a bill which would order teachers in all grades to label evolution as a theory or guess or face dismissal.
This will help children to be able to make up their own minds about creation.
Would it bother you if evolution wasn't taught? If some teachers skipped it?
Well, I can't say it would, no. Students feel like that they're overgrown monkeys, or that's the way they evolved instead of the image of God. That has a lot to do with their self-worth, their self-esteem.
With this bill, are you trying to bring religion into the classroom?
Well, I would not deny that. I would say that, but it's only fair. You know, as I mentioned, we have rights too. People that believe in God and believe that man was created in the image of God, we have a few rights, and this is a very small step.
So as I said, this really blew up, and it was national media coverage quite a bit. Since the Director of Science Education in Nashville Public Schools knew that I was very interested in evolution, then there was one person who I like to say became the face of the monkey bill, and that was me. I was teaching at Hillwood High School at that time, and to borrow the words of Dr. Ken Miller over there, this was so much fun. Every day the kids would come to class, they'd say, who's going to be here today? I'd say, ABC. And then they'd say, who's going to be here today? CNN. And then one of the other big pluses is that Eugenie Clark came to Nashville, and I got to meet, Eugenie Scott came to Nashville, and I got to meet her. I saw her for the first time in 30 years yesterday. It was really fun. I'm sorry about that. But anyway, some of the wonderful things that happened were, like, for example, I got to be on the front page of the New York Times. There I am at the bottom. I blew it up so that you could see it. I had a brother-in-law who was from Brooklyn, and I thought I'd really impress him, and I took him in. I said, look, I'm on the front page of the New York Times. And he says, oh, yeah, below the fold. and you know, I thought, well, I can't win with him. But don't worry, my sister divorced him a few years later. So, the other thing, that another really important one for me was this one, the USA Today. So if you look at this carefully, you can see that it's me and John Scopes and Clarence Darrow and William Jennings Bryan. And I thought, oh, my life is complete now. This has been so much fun. I'm so happy to have this happen. Well, the continuation of the bill goes on, and there were several problems, of course, with it. One was the definition of theory, which is not the opposite of the fact, as you all know. The second one was the cost of textbook revision, and the legislature was very creative. They decided to get around the cost of the textbook revision by just ignoring it. And then the last thing was that pesky Tennessee Constitution, which mandates that the legislature cherish literature and science, and also mandates that there's a separation of church and state. But they continued on with it, and it actually was defeated. And it was
with Tennessee school children looking on, senators wrapped up 2 days and more than 5 hours of debate on a controversial bill governing the teaching of evolution. Senator Tommy Burks has spent months trying to require public schools to teach evolution as only one of a number of competing theories about man's origin.
Do you believe that you descended from a lower species? I don't.
I know Senator Burks feels strongly about this bill.
Burke's chances of passing his bill looked good until powerful Lieutenant Governor John Wilder told his colleagues he believes in the biblical story of creation, but would still vote no.
Maybe I shouldn't have done this, and maybe some of you don't understand what I'm saying, but I do know what I'm talking about. God is great.
That led other religious conservatives to abandon the bill, and it failed 20-13.
So it did fail. Yes, it did fail. And I would say that that was a great victory. And it was also incredibly disappointing because the ACLU had told me that I could be the next John Scopes. They were ready to take it to court, and I was just thinking, oh yes, this is going to be wonderful. But then it was defeated. So a victory, they would say, you know, how do you feel about this? I'd say, oh, I feel so good about this. This is so nice. Thank you so much. And then I didn't realize at the time that this was going to be a temporary setback, and it was a temporary setback until 2011. And there is a story that goes with that, which is the sad story of Tommy Burks. But I'll get to that in just a moment. There was one reporter from Channel 5 News who came to me the day it was the bill was defeated, and he said, okay, this is the end of your 15 minutes of fame. Now, what would you like to say that you haven't been able to say before? And I said, oh, thank you so much. This is what I want to say.
Roberts feels the bill created so much controversy because it asks us to decide who calls the shots on planet Earth.
Are we going to perceive ourselves as creatures that were specially created, placed here, and given dominion over everything on the planet such that we're the rule makers? Or are we going to look at ourselves as part of a world of nature that has rules for us that we must obey?
And I thought that was a very important message to be able to give. And I did try to stick with that message throughout the time that I was teaching. Now, the sad story of Tommy Burks. In 1998, he went up for re-election. He was loved by the people of Monterey, Tennessee. He was running against a man a Republican named Byron Looper. Byron Looper changed his middle name legally to Low Tax so that on the ballot there would be Tommy Burks and Byron Low Tax Looper. Now, Tommy Burks was so loved by his community that there was no way that Byron Looper was going to win. So Byron Looper drove out to Tommy Burks' farm one morning. It was on a Sunday morning in late October, found Tommy Burks and shot him dead right on his farm. And jumped in his car, drove to Arkansas, went to his friend's house and said, you got to help me. I've just killed Tommy Burks. And his friend said, okay, I'll help you. Called the police, had him arrested, and he died in prison in 2012. So, except there was a problem. By Tennessee law, they couldn't change the ballot. So on the ballot is the dead guy and the guy who killed the dead guy. Well, the people of Monterey got together and said, okay, what are we going to do? And they wrote in Charlotte Burks, who was Tommy Burks' wife, who stayed in the legislature until 2015. And she was there in 2011 when the next things happened. And before I go on any further, I do want to say that there's a wonderful book by Ed Larson, who is here. And this book is, it's a wonderful book if you haven't read it. I have read it twice. And in the book, it talks about the USA Today photo. And I don't know if you remember, but I'm in that photo right there. Okay, I had to put that in again. And one day at Darwin Day at UT, when Ed Larson was speaking, I will tell you he is a complete gentleman, because what I did was I went up to him and I showed him the picture and I said, hey, man, you forgot me. So Ed Larson wrote in there, and Wesley Roberts, my mistake. Thank you so much. That was such a nice thing to do. And when the new edition of his book came out, I was so excited about that because there's an afterword in there that was added to the original version. And the afterword talks about the 2011 bill that came up that I was alluding to a minute ago. And this was a Teach the Controversy bill, which we heard about yesterday. I think they had carbon copies of it that they sent to every state legislature because it pretty much said exactly the same thing. So when I read Ed Larson's part about it, he talks about the people who objected to it. And I wanted to say, Dr. Larson, there's me objecting to the bill in front of the state legislature. So I've got the copy of the book, if you don't mind, if you can write that in again. But anyway, these are the two these are the two members of our legislature who are still in the legislature, by the way. Representative Bill Dunn is now Senator Bill Dunn, and they introduced the Teach the Controversy bill. And pretty much, it doesn't really matter if you read the whole thing because you saw it yesterday as well. But it's very much about biological evolution. And the idea is that teachers may be unsure. Oh, thank you for worrying about us, because we go in the classroom every day and we have no idea what to do. But they wanted us to respond respectfully and appropriately to differences of opinion about scientific subjects. And so there was quite a bit of pushback from a lot from the Vanderbilt community. And I think that one of the best exchanges that exemplifies what was going on with this comes from Dr. Molly Miller of Vanderbilt University. Wonderful, wonderful professor of geology, and she testified in front of the House committee, and this is what she had to say.
The science topics or issues listed as controversial in the bill are not scientifically controversial. They represent the best scientific explanation of natural phenomenon, and they are mandated in these science standards. Let's consider quickly two theories that are accepted by almost all scientists. One is atomic theory, the idea that the atoms are composed of protons, neutrons, and electrons, and the other is evolution. Neither one has any competing scientific theory that's really strong. I can't imagine that this legislative body would take time to debate whether or not there's atoms are made up of protons and neutrons, or if there's some better explanation. It's not a controversial theory, and it's not a controversial scientific theory, and neither is evolution.
Very, very eloquently said. The immediate response came from Representative John DeBerry, and I want to play it for you because just brace yourself for this.
Thank you very much. I think Representative John DeBerry, do you want to be recognized at this time?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we've sat through this issue this year, the only people that I see opening the door to evolution or, debates against intelligent design and so on and so forth are those who are coming in saying that if we don't think as you think, that we're a bunch of idiots. And I'm taken back from it. And you're very clear about what you said, because you've voiced your if clauses very, very carefully, very, very academically, and in such a way that, as usual, academians coming in saying that anybody who does not agree with them is some type of idiot. Now,
I do take issue with that.
Do I have the floor or not? I find it offensive that you will come in and walk in this body, and whether I agree with you or this legislation or not, that you present yourself in such a way that you're saying that you, first of all, you put two things in front of us. You put the atom in front of us, you put evolution in front of us. It don't take a rocket scientist to know that you're talking about an exact science, and you're talking about something that is a theory. And whether or not I agree or vote for this legislation or not, I take offense with people coming into this body, into this committee, and presenting your opinion, which is exactly what it is, which is as good as my opinion, as though just because you have prefixes and suffixes on your name that all of a sudden you are some type of standard. And I find that offensive.
That's what we were up against in 2011. When I showed this video to my class, I had a student turn to me and say, Mr. Roberts, why are there people who don't have degrees in biology or education making decisions about what we can do in here? And I said, that's a really good question. Yeah, that's a really good question. The bill was handed over to the Senate committee, and they kept it for a year, passed it in 2012 without much fanfare, because they just kind of silently put it through there. But I did get to testify to the Senate committee, and I would like to play that for you as the conclusion here. And after that, I also have a card with a QR code for that Scopes condensed last 2 days that I would like. My wife is here, and she's said that she would hand it out. But this is what I had to say to the Senate committee.
Madam Chairman, members of the committee, thank you. I'm Wesley H. Roberts. I currently teach at Hume-Fogg High School. It's currently the top performing high school in the state of Tennessee, and I hope that impresses you. I have been teaching for 29 years, and most of my career, including now, I've been teaching biology. So then I ask again, what is this bill trying to accomplish? As stated, The bill's wording mandates schools to, quote, respond appropriately and respectfully to differences of opinion about controversial issues, end quote. Is this a mandate to allow any idea, no matter how scientific or non-scientific, into the classroom? If so, this bill mandates the discussion of Fan Ku, the Chinese creation myth, in which fleas become humans, and the controversial idea that lunar eclipses are caused by a giant serpent swallowing the moon. Do we have time for this in science classes in Tennessee? However attractive it may sound to have discussions of non-scientific ideas in our science classroom, it is not the souls of our students that are at stake here. What is at stake is how they will perform on standardized tests in which they will be compared to other students across the state, the nation, and the world. I have been a reader of national advanced placement exams for the last 7 years, and I can most assuredly state to you that there has not been, nor will there ever be, a question on the AP exams that asks students to discuss a controversy in non-scientific terms. No question is stated, compare the merits of intelligent design to the scientific principles in the theory of evolution. There has not been a prompt directing students to explain their knowledge of creation myths from China or the Middle East. Indeed, AP science exams do not ask students for their opinions or to explain controversies. They ask students to demonstrate their knowledge of scientific principles, including evolution. So what does this mean for the student? It means that if time in science class is wasted on topics that are not part of the stated curriculum, they are losing out in the competition with other students in other states. And we allow teachers who represent our state to change the mandated science curriculum framework at will. Does this help our students as they take the state-mandated end-of-course exam that has no questions about controversy but asks many questions about accepted scientific theories? Does this help them to compete on a national and global scale to understand the consensus of the most learned scientists throughout the world? It does not. It presents science as a democratic process in which anybody's opinion, no matter how non-scientifically based, counts. And science does not work that way.
So, thank you. Yeah. Again, I would love to tell you that ended the thing, but it passed the next year. And so that was, until I retired, that was the law that was in place. So with that, I will say, of course, let's stick with science and only science in the classroom because, of course, it's important to our future. Thank you very much.